Okay, we're coming to the end of June, which means we're due for another Money Minute recap from the Money Minute email.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the Financial Pathway Podcast with Nate Skelly, where we discuss important financial questions and give you practical advice to guide you on your financial journey. If you enjoy the podcast, consider subscribing and leaving us a review. You can also follow the Financial Pathway page on Facebook for more helpful financial tips and videos.
As always, if you want to get these emails, just shoot me a message, info@nateskelly.com. I'll add you to the list and make sure that you get these each month. Just a roundup of interesting articles, popular posts, and just something, usually a recent interview or something along those lines that I've done. This month, we've got 4 articles, and I'm going to jump right into the first one, the hidden costs of home ownership. I'm sorry for all the homeowners out there. I know it's a tough time. If you're in the market for a home, it's a tough time. But even if you are a homeowner and you've got that low interest rate locked in, still there are some challenges. There's a new report from Bankrate where in their study, they found that the average single family home costs more than $18,000 a year in what they call quote unquote hidden costs. The reason this is a big deal to me is it's a jump of about 26% from just 4 years ago. So it's interesting because not only are home prices, because from 4 years ago, the average mortgage payment from 4 years ago to today is about double what it was because home prices have jumped, but also because interest rates have also gone up quite a bit. And so that combination has led to very, very high mortgage payments now. But even the internal costs of owning a home. A lot of times we get into this debate, say we, not necessarily me, but I see this debate raging about rent versus own. Oh, owning is always better. Who would want to rent? You're just throwing your money away. And then some people are like, no, renting's always better and it's less hassle. And who would want to own a home? And of course, the answer is going to depend on the person, a lot of different factors involved. But it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach. And this is just another reason why homeownership, while it's ideal, I think ideally it'd be great for people to own their own home. It's not always as amazing and always as a financial grand slam as people make it out to be. Okay, so where are we getting these numbers from? So they did this study 4 years ago, 2020. It was about $14,000 a year, $14,400 a year for these costs. The median home price in America is just over $400,000. Now, depending on where you're listening to, $400,000 might sound amazing, and $400,000 might sound really steep. But across the board, $400,000 is kind of the middle point. What they did is they calculated the home ownership costs for that average house, and they estimated 2% of the sales price would go to maintenance and repair costs each year. What's really tricky about home maintenance costs is they're not even and they're not predictable. Some years you have hardly any sort of maintenance costs, and then some years you got to get a new roof. Some years you need a new HVAC system. Some years you have to redo your flooring. Like when things kind of add up and they accrue over time, and then when the big maintenance and repairs come about, like they usually tend to be pretty costly. So when you try to smooth that out, average that out about 2%, I would say is a reasonable estimate. Also included in the 18,000 that they're using this number for, they included energy, internet, and cable bills, property taxes, and homeowners insurance. I feel like it's a little bit unfair to include like the energy, internet, and cable bills because that's still going to be something you have if you rent. That's not a unique home ownership cost. Sure, if you own a home, you're going to pay the utilities, probably going to have internet, cable. But you're probably going to have those things if you rent too. So that's a little bit of a quibble with the metrics that they're using. But still, the point is owning a home is a lot more than just paying the mortgage payment. And sometimes that's the problem that people have is they're comparing rent to what the mortgage payment is. And they're like, oh, see, look, the rent is a little bit higher than what the mortgage payment would be. So therefore, it makes sense to own a home. Well, there's a lot of other costs that are baked in that you have to keep in mind, not least of which is those repair and maintenance costs, which can be quite sizable. Think about it. A $400,000 home, 2%, that's $8,000 a year on average in maintenance costs. Definitely not cheap. So if you want to see the full article, Bankrate, that's on the Money Minute email. Let's move on to number 2. Restaurants are having their biggest year ever. It's an interesting trend because even though we have higher inflation, and you could even say maybe because we're having higher inflation, Americans are spending more on restaurants than ever before. Not only in total dollar amounts, but also as a percentage of their spending. I put a graph on the Facebook page, the Financial Pathway Facebook page a few days ago that showed that now the average American family spends more on restaurants than they do on groceries. It's really ironic to me because I've seen the rationale that people have because sometimes I'll see these graphics or these articles, and then the comments are something along the lines of, "Well, yeah, of course we're going out to eat more. Have you looked at what the prices are at the grocery store?" And I kind of want to be like, "Do you not realize the irony? Like going out to eat is always going to be more expensive than groceries because there's a lot more going on. The restaurant has to just pay for the food, but the building and the service and like the equipment, like." It's not cheaper. Going out to eat is definitely not cheaper than getting groceries at the grocery store. So sure, yes, things at the grocery store are more expensive, but everything's more expensive. Um, but it's an interesting breakdown. It shows that in 2019 we had set a record. Then of course 2020 with COVID and so many restaurants being shut down, naturally it dropped quite a bit. 2021 was still below 2019, but then in 2022 it surpassed our previous 2019 number, but it's continued to go up each year. And then 2024 we're set to pass through another record. Over $1 trillion is the projected spending overall on restaurants of every kind, which is just an insane number. I mean, I have no way to try to quantify whether that is right, but I'm going to assume that that's right because I'm going to trust that they've got the right data. Now, some other factors that I think are going into this is a couple of years ago, restaurants they were at a hard time because they're coming out of COVID. A lot of restaurants got shut down or had to be closed for a while, and a lot of them folded. A lot of them went out of business. But then coming out of that, a lot of restaurants were having trouble not only with the rising costs, but also with labor, like trying to get workers in place. They were understaffed. The overall quality of the experience of people going to restaurants was suffering. But now it seems like it's back. There was a period of time there where it seemed like it was so hard to find anybody to work a job, and now those things seem to be a lot more leveled out. But also, restaurants are experimenting with different innovations, different things. Like, for instance, one of the more novelty aspects, and I guess it'll become more commonplace, is even robotics in the kitchen and in service. I can't really speak for the robotics in the kitchen because I don't know what that necessarily looks like for restaurants. But for the first time a couple of weeks ago, we went to a restaurant that had one of the little robots that comes out like to serve you the food, which is more of a novelty at this point. I've seen posts about restaurants that had the little robots going around the store. I've never going around the restaurant. I've never been in a restaurant that had one of those. But it was funny because they could put the food on it. It would like come out to the table, but you still had a server handing you the food. So it was kind of like I don't know. I don't know really what the point is of those robots. Still, somebody's going to still come out to the food. They still come out to the table and serve you your food. Is it just kind of like a cool little thing to show off? Is that actually going to be? Are we just trying to get people used to the normalcy of seeing robots serving us our food? So when they finally remove the servers, we're not going to be weirded out by that. I don't know. But anyway, interesting article on just restaurant spending and how that's trending upwards in America. Number 3, the brand new Texas Stock Exchange. Yes, this is a real thing. Set to compete with the New York Stock Exchange. So in America right now, we basically have a duopoly of stock exchanges. So, and a stock exchange is just basically a place, a middleman, a facilitator of stock trades. You've got a stock that you want to sell. How do you connect to somebody who wants to buy? You put it on an exchange, and they facilitate that. And they have a very small little charge that they collect each time because what you're going to sell your stock for and what they're going to buy their stock for, maybe it's a penny difference, and then that exchange keeps the money. Well, New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ have a huge market share. They're really the only 2 players in the business. But the Texas Stock Exchange might be looking to eat into that market share a little bit. Be interesting to see how this goes. The reason it really caught my attention, because there's regional stock exchanges that it's like, okay, there's Chicago and Boston and Philadelphia, but they're nowhere near the 2 big ones. The reason that the Texas Stock Exchange intrigues me, and I think maybe has some potential here, is that it's got some big backers in BlackRock and Citadel, which, if you know those names, they're financial giants in the industry. So if they're behind it, or backing it, or they're supportive of it, it may be able to build over time to be a real rival. And I think overall, another big player in that space is good. Competition usually ends up being good for the end consumer. More competition usually leads to better products and services and prices for the end user. So, could this be a potential for a shakeup in the stock exchange industry and a good alternative? Could be. There's definitely been other stock exchanges that have started and tried and failed. So it remains to be seen. But it will be located in Dallas. And I just kind of like the idea of a Texas stock exchange. It just has a good ring to it. Okay, final article I want to cover with you this week. The NBA is close to finalizing a $76 billion TV rights deal with three companies: Disney, NBC, and Amazon. Disney owns ABC, which is where they would, and ESPN, which is where they would show these games. NBC, of course, and then Amazon, which is a little bit surprising. You may not care about this, but I find this fascinating, so I'm going to talk about it anyway. NBA viewership has been on a slight decline these last few years. And I think there's many reasons for that. A big part of it, I think, is just the nature of how we consume sports has changed so much. There's so much sports content media out there, social media, talk shows, podcasts, articles. We're just 24/7 sports media industry. And people just have a lot of things competing for their attention. So I think what's happening is more and more people don't, or at least they don't feel like they have the time to sit down and watch a ton of sports games. What they do like to do is they like to see highlights on Instagram. They like to see, a 5-minute segment on ESPN where somebody argues about who's the best NBA player right now. So people are like, they like to be aware of what's going on, but they're not necessarily as engaged in the product itself, which is the actual regular season basketball games. NBA playoffs is a different animal. Um, NBA playoffs still gets a good level of viewership, but in the sports landscape right now, football dominates. Like, it's not even close. I want to say from last year or the year before, of like the top 100 TV, like the 100 highest viewed TV events, like 93 of them were football games. It's like an astounding number. Okay, why is this a big deal? Why do I want to talk about it? Well, because the TV rights deal, here's what's crazy about it. Even though viewership is slightly down, the new deal is worth 2.5 times their current deal. So they're getting almost triple the money going forward. And this is going to be an 11-year deal, $76 billion for 11 years with these three companies all combined. That's insane. So these Disney and NBC and Amazon obviously see that there's value here, that they're willing to pay these prices. Previously, the NBA, as currently, I should say, currently the NBA has a deal with Disney, ESPN, ABC, and Warner, Time Warner, which is TNT. So that's where NBA games are streamed. ESPN or TNT, basically, is where NBA games are shown. That's going to change. Now it's going to be ESPN, ABC, NBC, which I think they used to do basketball, but it's been a while. But then Amazon. And I think they're following in the footsteps of Netflix and Peacock. Last year, Peacock paid the NFL for the rights to stream the Chiefs and Dolphins game, which was kind of a weird move. And everybody kind of made jokes about it, like, wait, what? I have to go get this streaming service Peacock just so I can watch this one football game. But a lot of people did, including yours truly. And then a lot of people said, oh, you know what? Actually, there's some shows and movies on here that I think I want to watch, and they kept it. Like, a lot of people kept it. Again, yours truly, I did. I don't have it anymore, but I kept it for a few months. And I think Amazon and Netflix and Peacock, like, they realize live sports are a great way to attract a lot of members, a lot of subscribers into their service. So Amazon's going to be showing NBA games here pretty soon. And it's just interesting. It's interesting to see the landscape, what things are worth, and at the end of the day, things are worth what people are willing to pay for them. And just goes to show how really in this era of so many different streaming services, really the one thing that people still find very, very valuable is live sports. Okay, on the Money Minute email, there's a couple popular posts from this month. And then last thing I did want to highlight, I had a great interview with Harley Snowd. Go ahead and check that out, episode 134, Money and Mental Health. Harley is a really thoughtful guy. He is speaking into a very important issue right now, something that honestly it just has not been historically handled or addressed very well within our church context, and that is the area of mental health, anxiety, depression, and it's a topic that a lot of people are looking for answers on right now. And there's a lot of overlap between our mental health and our money. And so I had a great conversation with Harley, just exploring things like how does our upbringing, our childhood, how does that shape our view of money? Are we aware of our views on money and how that stems from maybe some of our past experiences? Are we making money decisions more based on the math, or is it a lot more emotion involved than we let on? How do we combat things like envy and social comparison, because it's always in our face, and sometimes those feelings of anxiety and depression are compounded because we're looking for money to solve problems, not be downstream of proper mental health. So I hope you'll check that out, and Inspire Counseling Ministries with Harley, a great resource for churches. So that is going to do it for us on this month's installment of the Money Minute email. Thanks as always for listening. I'll see you next week on the next episode.